Okay, so the cake pops that I am rolling today are my decadent dark cake pop recipe. If you were watching my previous scope where I made the homemade chocolate sprinkles, and I talked about this recipe, that was the one that I was referring to. Hello. If you missed that broadcast and you want to see the homemade sprinkles that I made with chocolate, I used chocolate wafers. You can find that on my YouTube channel. On YouTube, I'm the same that I am here on Periscope and also on Twitter, sugarkissed_net, and I have that posted there so you can take a look at it. So that's this recipe. It's the dark chocolate. It's a new recipe, first time that I've done it. Hey, thank you for joining. Where do I buy the plastic pop holders? These here are actually, I love these. This is a neat little trick. They are the tops of egg cartons. So the large egg cartons, there's 30 here. And I get mine in eggs in this large size at Target and just save the plastic tops. And they're awesome because, you know, they're shaped like cake pops. So they're round like that. So you can stick your balls in there and they don't get the flat bottoms. You can keep them round. They kind of hold them steady for you too if you're like putting decorations on the front. So I just save those and have a couple of those, and as I roll I put them in there instead of setting them on a baking sheet. Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure. That's not my idea. I picked that tip up somewhere along the way on the web. I'm not sure where I saw that first, but oh, styrofoam. Yeah, I really like the plastic because, you know, you can just wipe them down. They're easy to clean and you can reuse them easily. But yeah, if you get those styrofoam egg cartons, you can certainly just rip off the tops and use those. Okay, so today what we're going to do is go through what the 3 keys are to rolling perfect cake pops every time. And if you have any other tips, feel free to speak up and let us know what those are. The first one is the consistency of your cake pop dough. Obviously, as you're rolling, you don't want your cake pops to be dry and flaky. So the key to getting the perfect cake pop dough is your cake pop recipe. And I'd say when I first started cake popping, what I was seeing a lot was recipes that were based off of I think Bakerella's first recipe, since I think she was the inventor of cake pops. And what I found was that there was way too much frosting in it. And what happens if you have too much frosting is it changes the consistency of your dough. When you roll it and stick it on your stick, a lot of times it'll just fall right off the stick. So a lot of those recipes start with a box cake mix, and you are told to add, I believe, half of a can of frosting. In my opinion, that's just way too much. I'm not sure anybody out there if you have an opinion on that. Does anybody else find that to be the case? You can just hit some hearts if you agree with that. Or if you disagree, feel free to comment on that. So usually most of my recipes start with a box cake mix. Yeah, half a can of frosting. I see a lot of hearts going up. You don't use frosting at all. Yeah, a lot of people, I've been seeing a lot of the newer recipes are ones that don't use frosting at all. And to me, that's new, but I definitely want to try that. A fourth of a can of frosting, no frosting, no frosting. Yeah, I think that seems to be the new trend, so that's definitely something I want to try. I know Cake Poppin', yes, Cake Poppin' uses no frosting. I think Painted and Sprinkle also has a recipe for no frosting. And I'm trying to think, just a couple of tablespoons. Okay, Cake Poppin's recipe, yeah, I want to try that, or Painted and Sprinkled, and who is the other one? Poppy Paints. Uses no frosting. So basically what they do is bake the recipe, and that's a moist recipe that they use so that the mix is moist, and then immediately when it comes out of the oven, I think they cover it with foil, and then that lets the cake steam and it stays moist. So that's certainly one option. The other option is to use less frosting. So like a lot of people said, you definitely don't use half a can. I usually use a homemade buttercream frosting. I just find those very tasty and easy to flavor, so you can change the flavor. And depending on the cake recipe and the frosting, I usually end up using about, I would say, a quarter of a cup. So I just add like tablespoon by tablespoon, add in the frosting until I get the consistency that I want. And the consistency that you're aiming for is Play-Doh, something that reminds you of Play-Doh. So you can mold it and kind of mush it around like you can Play-Doh and shape it into its forms without it cracking and drying, but then it's not too soft, it's dense enough that it can hold its shape, and when you dip it in your chocolate, it's not gonna just fall right off your stick. Okay, so that is the first key, is the consistency to your cake pop recipe. And if you need some recipes to play around with, I have a lot on my blog, sugarkiss.net. Like I said, most of my recipes start with a cake mix, and then I use a homemade buttercream. The other thing that I like to do to make kind of some fun, unique flavors is to use flavored coffee creamer instead of frosting. So basically you just need a wet binding ingredient, so either the buttercream or the coffee creamer. Does anybody use anything else other than frosting or coffee creamer that does add something to their cake pops? I think I've heard of people using peanut butter, although I've never tried it. Creamer, yeah, the creamer is fun because it's flavored. You can get all kinds of fun flavors, especially around the holidays. They come out with neat flavors, so you can flavor your cake. I like to use Lorian's flavorings, add those to my cake and my buttercream also to come up with fun flavors. Nutella, yeah, I've never used that before, but that certainly sounds delicious. Hazelnut cake pops, yeah, those sound amazing. Do you have that recipe posted anywhere? Yeah, Nutella sounds good. Yeah, so I'd love to play around with that or find a recipe for that. Okay, so the first key, again, flavored creamers all the time. Yeah, they're really great and super easy, right? It's just pre-made and you can just add it to your cake. Yes, please do, and share it with us when you do. I'd love to try it. Some people use ganache. Okay, that's what I actually used in this recipe here, so I'm really eager to try these once they're dipped in chocolate. I think they're going to be really decadent. I used dark chocolate ganache, so, and the consistency on these came out perfect. Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you scope it, that would be great. I'd love to see that. Hello. Oh my goodness. That's my sister, you guys. Now I'm really nervous if I wasn't nervous before. Okay, don't mind me being a dork. Okay, so the first key to your cake pops is the consistency of your cake pop dough. And sorry, Kristen, you missed that. You're gonna have to watch the replay. Okay, so the second, who is that there that's there with Kristen? Oh, are you with Kathleen? Oh my goodness. Oh, so nervous. Okay, so the first is dough consistency. The second is the size of your cake pops. And as you can see, every time I roll a cake pop, I am, hello out there in California. I bet you guys are having some nice weather right now. As you can see, every time that I am rolling a cake pop, before I do so, I'm scooping with the scooper. So people use a lot of different tools to measure out the size of their cake pop. Obviously, you want them to be at least about the same size. If for no other reason than appearance, you don't want to have all your cake pops lined up in a cake pop stand and have them be different sizes. Okay, also the size of your cake pop can be another contributor to your cake pop falling off your stick and disappearing into just an abyss of chocolate and gone forever. Well, not forever, those are the ones you have to taste test. So to get the same size ball every time, I use a stainless steel coffee scooper, and this is 1 tablespoon. And you can see the size that my cake balls come out. They're about 1 1/4 inches, and I think that's just the perfect bite size. This doesn't have a brand name on it, but if you were to go to my blog, sugarkiss.net, go to the cake pop section, I have a tutorial there on how to make cake pops, and in there I have links to the tools that I use, so you can find that there. Another tool that people use are cookie dough scoopers, And I use the coffee scooper, so I'm not sure what size. I think it might be the medium one where you can just scoop the dough and push it out and it'll be the same size every time. Another thing that I have actually never tried is weighing your cake pop dough. So if you have a little food scale, you can kind of grab it and then stick it on the scale and weigh it and make sure that you have the same amount every time. So again, you want to do that, figure out if you're going to be weighing it, figure out what the perfect weight is to get the perfect size cake pop. For me, the perfect size is 1.25 inches across. I think some people do them a little bit larger, up to 1.5 inches. Thank you for all the hearts, you guys. But don't go too big because they'll be too heavy, and they're supposed to be bite-sized, and you don't want them falling off your stick. Okay, so thank you for inviting followers. And all the hearts, you guys. Look at all those colors. So just to review, the first key to rolling perfect cake pops is your dough consistency. And the second is your size. So first you want to get the right recipe, and then you want to make sure you have the right tools. Thank you for sharing, everybody. I appreciate that. I hope you all are finding these tips useful. Okay, so that is the first and the second key. And then the third is going to be the temperature of your dough. Hello, thank you for joining. Oh my goodness, is that Nicole? I didn't know there were going to be celebrities in here. I loved your Star Wars Oreos that you made the other day. Oh my goodness, those were so cute. My husband would flip out over those. I gotta try those. Okay, so first, sorry, I think I'm repeating myself here, but the first key to perfect cake pops was your dough consistency. Do you use icing or water? Some people don't want them too sweet. I use frosting. I usually use, where did you get the plastic carton? Okay, I'll get to both those questions. I usually use homemade buttercream. Okay, plastic carton, I'll answer that question in just 1 second, okay? I usually use homemade buttercream because it's easy to flavor. I use Lauren's flavoring to change the flavor of my cakes and my buttercream. So that's usually what I use. Another unique additive that you can use, and this would help cut back on the sweetness if you're concerned about, is flavored coffee creamer. And that gives you some fun and unique flavors. And if you want to give that a try, if you check out my blog, sugarkiss.net, I have tutorials on there for using both of those. Homemade buttercream and also the coffee creamer. I have a cheesecake flavored recipe on there. Okay, the plastic carton thing, all this is the top to an egg carton. Yeah, it's a really unique way. I think I got that tip from Candy Quick. Placing the cake balls in the fridge, that I'm going to talk about that in just 1 second here when we get to the third tip. This is a plastic egg carton top, and I get mine, it's the 30 count egg cartons. Never crossed my mind. Lauren, oil drops. Okay, just 1 second. So this egg carton top, I get my cartons at Target when I get them this large. It's 30 eggs. I'm sure you can get them at your grocery store too. And it's just real nice because it's rounded, so you can set your cake pops in there and they won't roll away. Which I'm sure the dogs are disappointed that cake balls aren't rolling off onto the floor right now, but they won't roll away and they won't flatten the bottoms if you usually set them on a baking sheet. Thank you for all the hearts. And keep them steady, so if you're putting decorations on the top, I've used it before when I'm like attaching to the front of the cake pops, it keeps them nice and steady. Thank you for subscribing. And I had another question that I was going to answer, and I'm so sorry I forgot what it was. So whoever I told, just 1 second, if you could just type in that question again, I'll answer it for you. Oh, Lauren, oils. How much? You know, they have different kinds of flavoring, so it depends on what you're using it for. The recipes on my blog, I tell you in each recipe how much I add to the cake. Sometimes I add it to the cake, sometimes I add it to the frosting, sometimes I add it to the coating, and sometimes I add it to more than one of those things. Because cake pops are just like a little bite size, I think they need to pack a lot of flavor. So I'm not sure if you were specifically asking about how much Lauren oil to add to the frosting or to the chocolate. Yeah, it depends on how much you want. how strong you want it to be, and then also what you're putting it in, because you want to make sure, for example, if you're adding flavoring to your chocolate, I have accidentally done that with extract. If it's water-based, what brand of eggs do I have to get? I think it's just the Market Pantry eggs, the Target brand eggs. Then, okay, if you use extract, cake mix, something like, what is she think? I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Okay, if you add extract to your chocolate coatings and it's water-based, the chocolate's going to seize up on you. So I've done that before accidentally, and you end up with nice chunky coating. So you just want to check the ingredients and make sure you're using the right kind of flavoring for the right part of your cake pop that you're adding it to, either the cake or the frosting or the coating. And on L'Oreal Oil's website, they will give you that information. Okay, and I'm sorry, what was the last question? I need like a little notepad here to write down the questions as they come up. The egg carton, again, I get mine at Target, but it's just a 30-count egg carton with the plastic top, so I'm sure you can get that at the grocery store too. The brand of chocolate that I use, I covered that in my last scope, and I'll be doing another one actually I'm going to do one that compares different brands of chocolate, but what I really love is Chocoley. It's CHOCOLEY.com. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you will see, and I'm sugarkissed_net, just like I am Twitter on YouTube. You'll see the homemade chocolate sprinkles that I made, and I'm working with that chocolate in that video. It's just perfectly smooth. They have perfectly smooth chocolate that you don't have to add anything to, and it tastes amazing. It tastes amazing, and like my husband will eat the wafers by the handful. So I like that. And I also really like Candy Quick. Yes, chocoley.com. Thank you for posting that. So you can screenshot that if you want to check it out. So I also like Candy Quick, and I can get that at the grocery store. So that too I can just use without adding anything to it. The guitar, I have heard a lot of people saying that they use it, so I do want to try it. So hopefully when I do the scope comparing the chocolates, that'll be one of them in there. Okay, are there any other questions before we move on to what the third key is? Psycho Katie. It's a funny name. Watching TV, what are you watching on TV? What I like to watch when I'm rolling cake pops, I like to watch, you know, do like a marathon of The Sopranos or something like that. Just have that on in the background. American Dad. Oh yeah, my husband loves that show. American Dad and South Park, he loves all those. Football. Oh, football, not for me. Walking Dead. Are you watching the Fear the Walking Dead series right now? No, I was watching The Walking Dead, but I stopped watching it. Do you add frosting to your dough? Yes, most of my dough I do. I usually use homemade buttercream frosting, and I have my recipes on my blog, sugarkiss.net. You love The Walking Dead. And then I also, the other thing that I use is flavored coffee creamer. Cutting tomatoes. So the flavored coffee creamer is just a real unique way to get some different flavors, and it's really easy to use, and also it's not as sweet as frosting, so I use that also. This is actually a new recipe that I'm trying for some decadent dark chocolate ones. Yeah, the coffee creamer is fun, and I have some recipes on my blog if you want to check those out and give it a try. The pricing on the cake pops I can't help you with because I don't sell them, but I'm sure there are other people on here that could chime in and tell us what they charge for cake pops. Heavy cream, that actually sounds like that would be a good idea if you don't want to make it too sweet. Okay, so let's get back on track here. The first key to rolling perfect cake pops was the dough consistency, and we've talked a lot about different options for your recipe to make sure it's the right consistency. The big tip with that is just make sure you're not adding too much frosting. The chocolate that I like to use is Chocoley, and you can get that at chocoley.com, CHOCOLEY. And I also like Candy Quick, which I just get at the grocery store. And then you can just add coloring to that. I have not tried the pumpkin spice creamer, but you know what? That sounds like an awesome idea for the fall. And you've been seeing, I know, pumpkin everything everywhere. Yes, chocoley.com, so screenshot that if you want to check it out. I've never used cream cheese, but that sounds like another good option if you don't want to make them too sweet. So, first key to perfect cake pops is the consistency of your dough. You buy your chocolate from who? From Chocoley. The second key to perfect cake pops is to make sure they're the perfect size. So you want to have some method for keeping that consistent and making sure they're not too big, whether you're using a stainless coffee scooper like I do, or a cookie dough scooper, or you're weighing them. How much creamer? I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you go to the recipe that I have on the blog, sugarkiss.net, there's a post there. The only thing with the coffee creamer, I missed that last comment. If you go to the blog on sugarkiss.net, I have a recipe on there for cheesecake cake pops, and it's if you go to the cake pop section, the post is how to make unique flavored cake pops. And that'll tell you how much creamer to add. And again, you just want to add to your dry cake after you crumble it up. You just want to add little bit by little bit, and then you know, check your consistency and mush them together and see if it's like Play-Doh and workable, and then you'll know you have the perfect amount, and don't add any more. Stop as soon as you can. This recipe is not from scratch. I usually start with a box cake mix. Creamers do need refrigeration, but once you've like mixed it with a cake and you've coated it in chocolate, there's so much sugar in there. And my cake pops don't usually last for more than a couple of days. I don't make them too far ahead of time. I don't refrigerate them if I'm not going to have them out on the counter for more than a day or two. Oh, you think that you do? I don't. Same thing with the buttercream. I mean, you have butter in there, and I don't worry about that when there's all that sugar in there. I've actually, yeah, and I've read a little bit about cream cheese frosting too. When you have it mixed with so much sugar, and I forget the chemical reaction that happens, but it's okay for a little bit. I'll keep losing connection. What am I using to measure? I'm using a stainless steel coffee scooper. And if you go to my blog, sugarkiss.net, and take a look at the post that I have for how to make cake pops, there'll be a link in there to the tools that I use. This is a 1 tablespoon size one, and you can basically just get them off Amazon. So first key is the consistency of your dough. The second key is the size of your cake pops. And then the third one is the temperature. And that's where we get into refrigerating them and sticking them in the freezer, depending on what recipe you're using or a tutorial that you're following. A lot of people have you taking them in and out of the refrigerator and the freezer. A lot of people have different opinions on how much you need to do that. Thank you. This is just an egg, the top of an egg carton that holds 30 eggs, a plastic top. So typically what I do is after I make my cake pops and I have make my dough, after I've crumbled up the cake and mixed it with whatever binding agent that I'm using, I will chill it. So I stick it in the fridge. I usually make them the day before, so I stick it in the fridge overnight. If you're in a rush and need to speed things up, you can always use the freezer and just stick them in there for like 10 minutes. But the goal is to be working with dough that's just a little bit above room temperature. So you want it chilled. You don't want them half frozen. And if you're working with the dough and it's too warm, you know, it's going to get soft, and it's not going to hold its shape as well. If you're working with it and it's too cold, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be as easy to get the little cracks out. Yeah, I wrap it before I put it in the fridge. I like to use, instead of saran wrap, they have that press and seal stuff. I like to just wrap it up in that and stick it in the fridge. So I don't know if you can see, because I know this is kind of dark. cake is kind of dark, so it's hard to see the details of the dough. But as you're rolling it, typically I massage it a little bit, you know, because everyone likes a good massage. So I massage it a little bit and then roll it. And sometimes you'll get like a crack. Not sure if you can see that, maybe. A crack in your cake ball, and all you have to do is pinch together the dough where the crack is and just push it back together. I know that's hard to see. But if your cake ball is too cold, you're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be hard, and you're just going to keep getting those cracks. The other thing that happens if your cake balls are too cold, you're going to dip them and coat them, and as they warm up to room temperature and expand, you're going to get cracks in your coating. How many do you make from one cake box? You know, that kind of depends, I guess, on the recipe that you're using and whether you're somebody that cuts off the crust before you use it. But I'd say, like, as a general rule of thumb, somewhere between 30 to 40 is how many you would get out of a recipe. Do I ever make the mix from scratch? That's a good question. I don't think that I ever have. I like to, did you say after you mix the batter, you add it in the fridge? Yeah, after I make the dough, I put it in the fridge, usually overnight if I can. And if I'm in a rush, I'll just put it in the freezer for a little bit. I usually make it from a box mix, and I think you can make certain alterations to it that it still tastes amazing, and you can't tell the difference, especially in a bite-sized treat like this. And my blog, sugarkiss.net, is focused on creative sweets made simple. So I like to keep things simple so that everybody can do them, and you're not spending, you know, half your weekend doing it. So I don't know about you guys, but I have a full-time job, so this is something that I do for fun on the side. So I like to keep it simple and easy. So I usually start with a box cake mix and then just make my modifications from there. But there certainly are recipes out there that you can do them from scratch if you prefer to do that. And you can also just take your favorite cake recipe and try it out, make some modifications, and turn it into cake pops. I'd like to try some, I think root beer float cake pops would be fun. I made some root beer float cupcakes once, and they were awesome. So I think that would be a fun flavor to try. So those are my tips for today. That's what I wanted to share with you all, the 3 keys to perfect cake pops. Again, dough consistency, size, and temperature. You want to make sure you have those 3 things down. If you're looking for recipes or tutorials for cake pops, I have a lot of those on my blog, sugarkiss.net. You can check that out. If you ever have any questions, you can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. And you can also, my email address is up on my blog, so you can contact me that way. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you for all the hearts, you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, you have a yummy day too. Mine will be yummy once I get to try these. Thank you guys for joining. I chill them before rolling, yes, but if you chill them and you take them out and they are too cold, then you just, thank you, thanks for joining. Then you just let them sit for a little bit. And the ideal temperature, I think, is to just have them a little bit cooler than room temperature. So you don't want them too cold, because that'll just lead to not only problems with rolling them, but later with coating them. So if you can if you have some time and you can stick them in the fridge, do it that way. And what I do is after I make my dough and I combine it with whatever binding agent I'm using, frosting or coffee creamer or whatever it is, I just take a Ziploc bag and I put my dough in there, knead it in the bag, seal it, and then I put that in the fridge. Or the other thing that you can do is wrap it. I don't like saran wrap because I just find it difficult to work with, but you can wrap it with in that Glad press and seal. That's what I like to use because it kind of self-seals. You put it in the fridge, and if you don't have time, you can put it in the freezer and just put it in there for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then set it out until it's the right temperature. Do I chill after rolling? Yeah, I usually do, because stick it in the fridge for a little bit, because after you're handling it, it kind of warms up from just your hands. So, and a lot of times I roll them and then I freeze them. And so like these, I'll probably dip these next weekend. So that's another thing that these are perfect for, because if you're gonna freeze your cake pops, when you freeze them, you don't want them to be touching when they freeze. That's how you get them to freeze as individual cake pops, and so they don't get all frozen together. So if you use these egg carton tops, it keeps them separated. But I've also done it on baking sheets. You can just set them out on baking sheets and make sure that they're not touching and freeze them. And then you put them in a baggie and they're good to go. So you can freeze them before you dip them, and I've also frozen them when they were fully decorated. I have a post on my blog for that as well. I mean, fully decorated, like dipped and coated in chocolate and had candy pieces attached to them. They were little scarecrows, so they had faces and hair and hats and the whole shebang, and I froze them. So I just try to only freeze them once during the process, so that I'm not freezing them and refreezing them. Sorry guys if you can hear my puppy. I think she wants to go outside. Yeah, lots of information on my blog, lots of tutorials. I have a Cake Pops 101 section, so if you're just getting started, that'll help you. I think my biggest tip if you're getting started is to be careful if you're going to use Wilton's chocolate, because that's what I started with, and it's just not the right consistency. You have to thin it out or you're going to have problems when you start dipping, so just be warned about that. Okay, so that's about it. I just wanted to go over the tips. You want to have the right dough consistency, the right size, and the right temperature, and then you will be well on your way to some successful cake pops, and it just takes a little bit of practice. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys for following and for watching.